We're going to give you 5 marriage tips and 1 bonus tip at the end, so don't go anywhere, all right? Hey!
We're watching you.
What is the toughest year of marriage?
The one you're in.
Yes, the current year.
The current year.
You said that weird.
So the first thing that we thought we'd share with you is to start with a shared mission. And
Unequally yoked. Sorry.
Don't be unequally yoked, I believe is the quote
don't
you're
be
looking
unequally yoked.
But it's something that we talked about a little bit in our dating videos too. Just we were serving together when we met and had a focus on a goal, like an end goal of, in that case, a ministry and still ministry. But it wasn't just, oh, we happened to run into each other and here's a guy that his personality was nice, but like we were focused on accomplishing something together. And I think that really set us up well.
Yeah.
And taught us how to work together even before we were married.
So we were in a position, in a place where we had a mission and a vision, and we kind of had core values. So we're both in that, working towards that. We had that common goal. We were doing something that we were working together. And I guess marriage advice, like, don't go to the bar.
What? Don't go to the bar.
Don't go to the bar to try to find your spouse, man. Especially, for like Christian dating advice, like make sure you're in the right venues, right? In going towards something godly if you're going to try to find a spouse, because I mean miracles can happen, but good luck, buddy.
Yeah, I think finding somebody, if you're in long-term service or with a certain organization for long-term, you're going to see people around you that and not only like do you see, oh, they're giving their time to serve, but you also see how they're doing it. Do they have a good attitude? Do they have a good work ethic? Do they work well with other people? How do they handle conflict? So you get a really good insight.
I'd like to start this section by saying my wife is super annoying.
Wasn't expecting that.
Just kidding. Second piece of advice on this is not talking poorly about each other. I mean, it's one thing, not to talk poorly to each other when you're with the person, but like bashing your spouse out in public, just making them the butt of every joke. We see it on nighttime TV.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't anymore really, but
sitcoms are horrible.
It's been on like, and go to our friends and complain about our wives. We go to our work and our employees or employers and bash on our spouses, and then we go to our parents and bash on our spouses and just complain. Stop it. It is damaging your marriage. Don't do it ever.
Yeah.
Don't do it. I mean, unless there's like some inside joke that you guys both agree that it's like, okay, this is one of those things we could just use in, banter and conversation to kind of open up a conversation into something greater, but it has to be mutual.
Yeah. And there's a fine line between being funny and being unkind. Knowing where that line is may take a little bit of practice, but it's worth figuring out.
My bad.
Somebody told me once that, like, if I were to go to a friend and be like, my husband is such a jerk, he did whatever, then I go home and look him in the eyeballs and we make up and we can move on. My friend hasn't forgiven him. So, like, a lot of times you'll see situations like that.
Typically with family, it's even worse.
Yeah, with, like, family or friends that'll hold a grudge. You're like, well, remember that one time when I moved on past it. So, I don't know, just creating opportunities for other people to think highly of your spouse in the same way that you would want them to have people thinking highly of you.
Well, yeah, and so that is one of those things, like, either or my wife or myself out talking about the other person in an unkind manner. Sometimes it catches someone of the opposite sex's ear, right? And then it catches their ear and they start leaning in on this and be like, oh, I'm going to come to the rescue to you because your spouse is trash, right? Because you tell me about it all the time. And I'm saying this stuff happens all the time. Yeah. Be on guard. It's like, so your most trusted friend in the world, the one that's supposed to help you realize and remember that you're a child of God, goes out and tells everyone you're trash. Essentially, I mean, I could probably word that better, right? And instead of, working through the issues with you as a friend and someone that loves you, and I mean, it's no way to practice a marriage,
Right.
And I say practice because it'll work on a marriage. It just, and I would say if you've been stuck in that, stop, apologize.
Yeah, own it.
And if people are like, "Hey, I heard your husband's a jerk," I said, "Well, listen,
You heard wrong." We all have our moments.
no one's perfect, but we're trying, and we're trying to do it God's way."
So number 3 is to discuss things that are going to impact our family culture before we jump into them. And that could be anything from like signing up for kids' activities or hobbies, even things that you wouldn't necessarily think of as affecting like everybody in the family, like diets and sleeping schedules, whatever it is. If you want to get up early in the morning and work out, like just having those conversations, I think is beneficial. We found he's working out. But we've had conversations, for example, diet. Like you wouldn't think it's necessarily a big deal, but if I'm cooking meals primarily, but he's deciding he's going to go on a diet, like I need to know that before I go to the grocery store. Those kinds of things, like just keeping each other in the loop. Or if we want to decide we want to add something onto our family, like when we got the rabbits or the quail, just that's a time and money investment, making sure everybody's on board before we just kind of, oh, by the way, I did a thing, so having those conversations first.
Yeah, and I mean, that's trial and error sometimes. You got to kind of work through these things. I mean, I guess I have a slight advantage just from hearing my dad talk about, because he had 7 kids at home at one time, the most at home at one time, 10 kids total, but it was like, we're on the crazy train. And I'm just like, okay, we got to be careful not to get on this crazy train where you book all day, every night. And yes, you want to enrich your kids and have them in activities, but we all need to try to really be wise how we do that. So we actually have downtime for rest. And it's not just go, 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 because that's not good for anyone.
We don't do well with that.
And so we try to find things that everyone or most people can do.
Yeah.
And try to just condense them, like out of necessity, like because we have a lot of kids. But the reality is that can translate to people with less kids also.
Sure.
Because, I mean, any parents out there feel overwhelmed with 1 kid, with 2 kids? I mean, like kids are overwhelming. Like ours just stopped crying. She's up at almost 10 o'clock at night for no reason, just like bouncing off the walls.
She's not happy tonight. She's not happy.
Right, let's talk about date night. You know what that means. Well, fortunately for our family, we decided early on that we wanted to have date nights. It was a time for me and my wife to get out, and we were able to do it. No kids made it easier at first. And then my in-laws, Lucy and Dan, were rock stars. So they watched our kids every Wednesday for
years,
10 years at least, right? And it was like, well, then you think, well, now I know why they have so many kids. So,
sorry.
I mean,
not sorry.
But I mean, it's just something that's been important. And we still do date nights. Lately, we've been doing date nights just out of necessity because we got a lot of kids. It's hard, to get them all ready and go across town. And it's just, they're a lot, even if it's just a couple hours. So we try to schedule we do date nights once a week, but we try to schedule other times where your mom comes over or weekends and stuff like that. We haven't got too far in the babysitters just because there's a lot of babies and it's just a little tough. And maybe if we're the right person, but some of our kids are getting older, so maybe soon. But date nights are important. You have to invest in your marriage and you take the time to do it. And I don't know why people don't do it. I don't know. Like, it's just one of those things.
I mean,
that's
I
always
think
been,
there's a lot of people that will say we don't because it's too hard to find a babysitter. We don't because it's not like we don't have enough money to pay for a babysitter or meal or whatever. But the reality is, like, when we were dating, most of our dates were at parks and like just walking around outside and doing stuff like that. And so like date nights can be as simple as going to a park.
Or just walk around the block.
Or, and if you don't have a babysitter, then go to a playground and let your kids play and walk around the outside of the playground. Like, you can find ways to focus on each other, even if there are barriers there.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's band practice or it's this or that. And so you gotta, if you don't carve out that time, someone's going to take that time from you. It'll be gone in a heartbeat, and you have to make it a priority, or it's long gone.
Yeah.
Goodbye date night.
Well, and I think one thing we did was date night was always Wednesday night, and that was partially because that's kind of the schedule we were on with my parents. But even when we were dating, it was almost every week on the same night.
Yeah.
But now that's in my mind. So many times it was like, hey, we have this thing on Wednesdays. I'm like, well, date night or this thing on Wednesdays. Not that we don't skip it every once in a while, but it gets
just
a
by
structure.
necessity, we have to sometimes, or we change it around.
Yeah.
And so that kind of goes into our next one, because there was, a time in our life when we started having more kids, and it was like getting, we're doing all the church stuff, we're doing all the ministry stuff, we're doing work, we're doing our family. And it was like, I just had a sense of like, we had our date nights, but we just didn't have any individual time.
Yeah.
It seemed like, and I was like, I remember I came to you and I was like, Thursday night, goodbye. I was
Get
like,
out.
Leave, go, do whatever you want. So my wife can go shopping or go hang out with a friend and have coffee. She has Thursday nights free. That is the rule, not the exception.
Right.
And somehow, some way, I ended up getting my man night on Tuesdays, which used to be band practice.
Yeah.
Or I used to do men's Bible studies, or we would take those time to sometimes do extracurricular stuff, but it was set apart.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, anytime I'm trying to make plans with a friend, I don't feel like I have to jump through all these hoops to put on the schedule. Like, do we have a babysitter? Are you going to be home? Or whatever else. Like, I have Thursday nights free. Pick one.
Yeah.
Any of them. Like, just pick one.
Yeah, and it's one of those things,
helps.
it's like, if we weren't in a healthy relationship, this might be a tough one for people, because people with trust issues or stuff like that, it's like, you mean you just let your wife leave or your husband leave and do whatever they want? It's like, yeah, because they're not idiots.
Pretty boring. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, it's just a scheduling hack, I guess. Just keep it free for individual time. And next Tuesday, or is it next Tuesday?
Next Tuesday, yep.
My mother-in-law is coming over. She said she'll watch the kids, so we're going out on a date night on Tuesday. And guess what? Wednesday might be man night, or we might do a date night in. Just depends. Because our individual time, to do that kind of stuff, is valuable.
Yep.
Our time together is valuable. And sometimes these nights, right, there's nothing to do. There's literally nothing to do. And do you know what? That's okay. Sometimes that's great. Like, I'm just going to go for a drive. It's going to cost me $10,000 in gas, but I'm going for a drive.
Yeah.
And guess what? I listen to some music, listen to a sermon, listen to a podcast, or whatever it is. But that time of refreshing and the option has been very valuable in the long term.
And I think it frees up brain space. Like, if I know I have a project I want to work on or something like I really need to focus on, Thursday is coming. So it always is this kind of carved out pocket of time for a project, or just wrapping my brain around something, or something that just needs more energy or effort.
Yeah. And so part of that, which I actually said today, I was trying to give some insight to a kid at work, but I said, something that I've told you a long time ago, like, only you could protect your time.
Yeah.
Like, no one cares about your time.
As much as you do.
Right? So you need to. And you need to protect it, because it's value. It's like, I'm booked. What are you booked for? To do nothing. Well, then you're not booked. No. I am booked to do nothing.
Can I tell you a little life hack?
Okay.
I have a meeting. Always, I
I have a meeting to do what?
Doesn't matter, because you don't ask people what their work meetings are.
Well, people do
I
it
have
to
a
me.
meeting. It
Yeah.
could be with myself. It could be with my best friend. I have a meeting.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
not
not
available.
disingenuous. It's, yeah.
It's on the schedule.
Yeah. So this is our bonus tip, and we're going to talk about this in depth in our next one. I mean, a little bit more in depth.
A little bit more in depth.
I'm not that deep. But a resource that people could use when it comes to marriage, it's really helped us. I've taught through it a couple of times. And the tip is get this book. It's Marriage on the Rock by Jimmy Evans. Well, thanks for checking out this Kilby Life video.
Yeah, and we'll put a link for that book in the description below.
All right, Kilby out.